In today's Learning Bites, you must be able to define radical candor, its importance, and what candor is not. Recognize abilities and feedback mechanisms associated with radical candor, and demonstrate application of radical candor in feedback communication. Have you ever been told, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? Yeah, sure, it may be applicable to some situations, but do you think this is a good practice in the workplace? Take a moment to think about these questions. Would you rather stay in an organization which treats you kindly in front of you, but criticizes you behind your back? Or in an organization which critiques you for your growth and your development? Or would you rather accept straightforward feedback or receive no feedback at all? According to Kim Scott, guidance is praise and criticism, and the best way to deliver that is in a balanced way of caring personally while challenging directly, and that is radical candor. To care personally is to have genuine interest and concern for helping the other person, and to challenge directly is to say things straightforwardly without sugarcoating or silencing them, but avoiding value judgments and conclusions. Candid communication in the workplace allows you to both give and get the information you need to improve individual and team performance and professional growth. Let us discuss the 4 possible types of communication using Kim Scott's radical candor framework. Again, Kim Scott refers to radical candor as caring personally while challenging directly. And by combining the absence and presence of these 2 factors, Kim Scott came up with this framework, which she labels obnoxious aggression, ruinous empathy, manipulative insincerity, and of course, radical candor. Obnoxious aggression is also called brutal honesty or front stabbing. This occurs when challenging directly is done without personally caring or criticizing somebody harshly with a little show of care or concern and that you wanted to help. It's praise that doesn't feel sincere or criticism and feedback that isn't delivered kindly. And when that happens, people shut down. Ruinous empathy is what happens when you want to spare someone's short-term feelings so you don't tell them something they need to know. You care personally but fail to challenge directly. This is the most common mistake in organizations. It's praise that isn't specific enough to help the person understand what was good and bad, or criticism that is sugar-coated and unclear, or simply silence. Ruinous empathy is a form of selfish feedback where we communicate ineffectively with the excuse of not hurting the other person, but in fact, we do. Doing this may feel nice or safe, but is ultimately unhelpful and even damaging. This is a feedback fail. Manipulative insincerity is also called backstabbing, political, or passive-aggressive behavior. This occurs when both elements are absent, when you neither care personally nor challenge directly. Guidance that is manipulatively insincere rarely reflects what the speaker actually thinks. It's praise that is insincere, maybe flattery in front of the person, but harsh criticism behind their back. This is the worst kind of feedback fail. Radical candor is the effective communication model which is ideal in the workplace. It takes strength of character, competence, and empathy. It is making it candidly clear to the other person that our desire to help is genuine, that we care, and that it is from this sincere or candid interest that we recommend actual and substantial criticism with the conviction that it may be useful. So in that case, obnoxious aggression results to defensiveness, which produces little change. Ruinous empathy is being ignorant, which brings no change towards a person. And manipulative insincerity results into mistrust and also no change at all. Only radical candor brings growth and profound change to an individual, which could also be beneficial to the team. Now that we know what radical candor is about, why is it important, especially to leaders and managers? Radical candor promotes positive communication, transparency, relationship development, honesty balance, and lastly, growth mindset. Candid statements given with the right amount of kindness and constructive guidance show that you are caring, not fault-finding. Because radical candor creates a culture of transparency and openness. It encourages everyone in the organization or team to voice out their concerns and opinions. And it also creates a strong and constructive relationship between managers and employees. And this communication encourages a sensitive balance between being direct and honest while not offending. Radical candor also promotes a learning environment. This encourages teams to embrace failures and take more risks. And we should also note that radical candor is not about aggression, perfect timing, and personal criticism. Open communication and feedback may not always be positive, but it should always be intended to help and be given with sincerity and respect. Also, lack of candor and timeliness in feedback can negatively impact your team. It has the power to convert a mistake into a learning experience in the moment, not at a later, perfect time. And radical candor isn't focused on the person, but the issue that needs to be addressed. Through this approach, you can avoid making the listener feel attacked. And what are the abilities that lead to the mastery of radical candor? Those are assuming the best intentions, being considerate, being objective, focusing on the good of the company, getting to the point, sharing specific examples, and staying factual. So how do we get started with radical candor? In building a culture with behavioral trust and habitual feedback, you can start with these 3 steps. First, get feedback from others. Create the example that you appreciate and offer constructive feedback. Second, give feedback and gauge feedback. Challenge directly and show that you care personally. And lastly, encourage feedback. Create authentic activities that allow team members to feel comfortable voicing their feedback between one another. Now, let us try to assess. How would you respond to the following scenarios? Scenario number 1. Jane's presentation has been boring. What would you do? A. Approach her immediately and say, "Hey Jane, the people were bored with your presentation." B. Approach her after the meeting privately and say, "Hi Jane, I have noticed a lot of people yawn during your presentation. Maybe you could make it livelier and more engaging next time?" C. Tell her that she did a great job, thinking she will realize it anyway. And D. Look for people who also found her presentation boring and talk about it with them instead. That's right. The correct answer is letter B. Scenario number 2. Your boss delivered a message to your group chat which seemed offending to you. Would you A. Send him a private message and let him know how you felt and tell him how he could have better delivered his message? B. Directly message him through the group chat that you were offended with his message? C. Talk to your coworkers and let them know how offending his message was for you? Or D. Ignore it because he is your boss and you should just follow what he said? Great job! The correct answer is letter A. Scenario number 3. One of your subordinates has been submitting outputs with errors twice. What would you do? A. Yell at him for committing mistakes while telling him what he should have done instead. B. You just let him figure things out on his own, even if it delays the submission of the output. C. Reprimand him for the repeated mistakes, but carefully evaluate what aspect he did not understand and teach him what he should do. Or D. Ignore him and ask others to do it instead without telling him. Alright, the correct answer is letter C. Great job! Quality feedback through radical candor allows us to completely understand what we need to improve, how we do our tasks, or decide on things. Therefore, manipulative insincerity, obnoxious aggression, or ruinous empathy are ineffective forms of communication since it doesn't provide the right information needed by a person to be able to do better, but instead triggers negative reactions and emotions. It will take a lot of practice in finding the right balance between challenging directly and caring personally, and to be able to provide a feedback that's radically candid. Keep these factors in mind. To be radically candid is to be able to provide a kind, sincere, clear, and specific feedback, which is a balance of all types of communication as discussed. Being ruinously empathetic lacks clarity and specificity. Being obnoxiously aggressive lacks sincerity and kindness. And being manipulatively insincere lacks all four factors which a radically candid person must have. And again, remember, radical candor is caring personally while challenging directly. At the end of the day, the nicest thing we can do for everyone is to help them grow. This is best achieved through quality feedback. And with that, let us make the culture of radical candor present in our daily lives and interactions.